Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This episode is sponsored by Postman. Postman is the world's leading API platform, trusted by 98% of the Fortune 500 and over 40 million developers. Tap into APIs from 18,000 plus companies to power agents that make smarter decisions. Learn more at postman.com/podcast/codestory. This message is sponsored by Melee Search. Today, search isn't just a feature, it's a cornerstone. And Melee Search gives your users the experience they need with lightning-fast performance, full-text search, AI usage, and multimodal capabilities. Melee Search delivers relevant results in less than the blink of an eye. Use the promo code CODESTORY at checkout to get 2 months free at meleesearch.com. That's MEILI search.com. This episode is brought to you by Paddle. Don't settle for less when you can have more, MOR, with Paddle, your merchant of record. Eliminate the headaches of payments, grow your revenue everywhere, and focus on what you do best, building your product. Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. This episode is brought to you by PropelOff. People take authentication for granted, but it's more than how customers log into your product. It's how you manage your relationship with your users. The easiest way to make authentication your advantage is to use PropelOff. PropelOff is more than just functional. It's powerful. With tools like Managed UIs, Enterprise SSO, robust user management features, and actionable insights, PropelOff adapts as your product grows. And the best part? When Auth is effortless, your team can focus on scaling, not troubleshooting. That means more releases, happier customers, and more growth for your business. Save dev time, win over your customers, and propel your business forward with PropelOff. Check them out at propeloff.com. That's PROPELAUTH.com.
Candidly, if you reflect back to those years, I think there was a lot of stuff that we actually did pretty poorly. It was a whole meme of like, every time the price of Bitcoin goes up, Coinbase goes down. And that was me and my team. Like when Coinbase was going down and we were having scalability issues, it was like my day that was getting completely blown up, trying to figure out what do we actually do. We got to see firsthand, what does it look like to try and scale? What does it look like to fail? What are the key gotchas that we want to avoid if we do this again? And we've really injected a lot of that thinking, those learnings into our work on Base. Because you can't build a global economy unless it works at a massive scale. I'm Jesse Pollak, and I'm the creator of Base.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to
Took
do next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their
A
back.
company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve more. I was proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was a
Yes,
pain.
we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time. The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it
you.
off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
to ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want it.
It's not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story.
I'm your host, Noah Laphart, and today how Jesse Pollak is bringing the world onto the blockchain in order to unleash creativity in the global economy. Jesse Pollak grew up in Washington, D.C., attending a Quaker school through graduating high school. He played competitive soccer, which was a huge part of his life, and eventually he moved to SoCal, Southern California, to attend school at Berkley. He got the bug to start a company and only lasted 2 years at school before he ventured out on his own. Eventually, his company got acquired by Coinbase, which opened up a whole new world for him. Outside of tech, he's married with a 4-month-old boy. He doesn't drink caffeine, but daily enjoys a decaf cappuccino. In December 2021, Jesse and his team were wandering in the desert for a while, trying to figure out what was next on-chain. After considering what AWS and Heroic was for Web 2.0, they figured out that in order to go build the apps that companies like Coinbase had, they needed a foundational layer in the ecosystem to fuel that development. This is the creation story of Base.
So the best way to think about Base is that it's a global economy. And that global economy is really comprised of a few things. First, there's the underlying chain. And Base is a chain. It's called an Ethereum Layer 2, where people can go and deploy apps. And those apps can range from things like stablecoins, where it's really easy to move money, from people or for businesses, to social apps, where people are building things for creators to help them earn more. And so at the bottom of Base sits that chain, which is really best thought of as a software platform, kind of like the App Store. Then on top of that chain, we have a whole set of tools that make it really easy for people to build. And then finally, on top of those tools, we have really easy way for everyday people to actually access all of those apps, actually do things in this economy. And people are doing all sorts of things. They're obviously, sending and receiving money for free, totally globally. They are using these new social products that actually put more value back in the hands of creators and help them earn money regardless of where they are in the world. They're doing things like growing their assets. So you can actually earn more on chain right now in the Base economy than in your traditional savings account because just the products work better for the everyday people who are using them. And so one way of thinking about Base is that it's a new internet almost, where instead of being controlled by a small number of big corporations who take a lot of the value and take that value away from the people who are using the internet, it's open and accessible to everyone, regardless of where you live, regardless of where you're born. And it's built in such a way where when you use the products, you keep the value. And you get to benefit from all this incredible innovation that has happened over the last 20 years in the internet, but has been mostly kind of routed from a value perspective back to a small number of big corporations. And so we're super excited about the progress we've made. Base has only been around for a little bit less than 2 years, but already there's millions of people, tens of thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of developers who are plugging in to use this new economy to help build better businesses, have a happier family, do cool things that really didn't think were possible before.
Okay, so tell me about the MVP for Base. So that first version of Base that you created, how long did it take to build and what sort of tools were you using to bring it to life?
I had spent previously 5 years at Coinbase. I was an engineer when I joined, and then I pretty quickly took on managing a small team and then grew that team. And I was responsible for all of the consumer products at Coinbase. Coinbase Pro, Coinbase Wallet. Pretty much if you've ever used Coinbase before and you're listening to this, I worked on those products and my teams worked on those products. After about 5 years of doing that, I loved the product, I loved the team, but I was a founder before and I knew I wanted to go start something again. And so I took a little bit of a step back from that role and I thought I was going to leave the company. I had a bunch of conversations with Brian, who's the CEO, and other people on the exec team, and kind of zeroed in on this idea that, Coinbase has always been a crypto company, but we were also started in 2012. And back in 2012, the only crypto was Bitcoin. And, you just heard me talk about Base and this economy and all of this incredible app possibility. None of that existed in 2012. And so you can kind of think about Coinbase historically as having been built pre all of that innovation being possible. And so what I zeroed in on with kind of the executive team at Coinbase was there was this opportunity for us to almost reimagine Coinbase. If Coinbase was built today, at the time it was 2021, and we had access to smart contracts and we had access to, layer 2 blockchains like Base is today, what would it look like? How could we bring Coinbase from its kind of off-chain history to a new on-chain world? I started investigating that question. First, it was just me. Then I joined by a couple people, and we spent about a year just wandering in the desert. We went through a bunch of different ideas. None of them worked. I talked to, hundreds and hundreds of external folks and internal folks trying to zero in on when I say this thing of like, let's bring Coinbase on chain, what does that actually mean? As we went through that process, the thing that kept coming up again and again was that if we wanted to build kind of the products that Coinbase has offered, and we wanted to build them in this new way, the first thing we needed to do was actually have a platform where we could build those products. And one way of thinking about this is like way harder to build new software if you have to, every single time you get started, go and get a data center and like set up your own boxes. And so what emerged in the Web 2 world was AWS and Heroic and all these tools that were a platform that made it really easy for people to build new apps. In this new on-chain world, that platform didn't really exist, and it definitely didn't exist in a way that was scalable and secure and usable enough for a business at the kind of scale of Coinbase. And so after about a year of trying to build those products, we took a step back and said, okay, what we've learned from this is maybe we need to go and build that platform first. And so that's exactly what we did. We knew that Ethereum was already the most decentralized and scalable underlying platform, but that it had these really high costs for actually using it. But the developer environment, this thing called the EVM, which is the Ethereum virtual machine, you can kind of think about it like any virtual machine where you can write code into it. There's a language called Solidity that makes it easy to write code into the Ethereum virtual machine. We knew that was really powerful. And we knew that Ethereum had zeroed in on this idea of scaling through these things called layer 2s, which you can kind of think about as like carpool lanes for Ethereum. You can batch a lot of transactions together and submit them to Ethereum, and that makes them much cheaper for the end user. That kind of thesis of we need a platform, Ethereum is the place to build it. There's this kind of tooling around Solidity and EVM and layer 2s that we can put together and use our expertise at building for scale to make it work really well for us. And then if we're going to make it work really well for us, we can also make it work really well for the world. And so that was this kind of idea, insight that we had in December 2021. We then launched the first version of Base in February, just a test net, which is kind of like, developer environment where there's not real money, but anyone can build. And then we launched the main net, which is kind of the real money version of it in August. And now here we are a couple years later, with almost $14-15 billion built onto our platform and millions of people using it on a regular basis. The really cool thing about crypto and on-chain and this new way of building is that everything's open source. And so a lot of our work was figuring out what are the, really powerful open source solutions that we can leverage to help us move faster. So we worked with this organization called Optimism that had built this kind of software technology stack that's MIT licensed called the OP stack, which let us kind of start building our chain really, really quickly. We collaborated with other teams like the Paradigm team to kind of invest in this thing called Reth, which was an open source client for getting more performance out of our chain. We really leaned into open source tooling on the front end, like VM and WAGMI, that made it really easy for developers to build, so that apps became this really easy thing to go from 0 to 1 on. And we built a lot of relationships across the industry to make sure that as we were putting these pieces together, we were then distilling out the learnings of what was working, what wasn't working, where were the kind of gaps in the developer experience, so that we could actually go and solve them, again, in a fully open source way, so everyone else could benefit from it. And this is probably my favorite thing about crypto. And I think it's, something for Web 2 developers that they might not fully understand, but because these kind of developer platforms like Base are fully open, where all of the code that you publish into Base that runs the apps is running on this kind of shared computer that we all get to look at and build on top of, It's all open source by default. It's all composable by default. So if someone builds something really cool, you can then build on top of it with no permissions required. And that just enables this new way of building that I think a lot of people, when they give it a shot, will actually find that it's kind of like what we have always dreamed about.
This episode is brought to you by Paddle. As a startup, you face unique challenges to stay competitive. You and your team need to stay focused on your product, not your payments. You need to do more, MOR, and DIY less. With Paddle. Paddle is your merchant of record, becoming the seller of record for your SaaS transactions, enabling your team to focus on what's important, your product. Paddle handles all payment management across multiple gateways and methods, taking ownership of tax liability while remaining compliant with regulations across all markets. The platform handles all aspects of SaaS billing models, upgrades, add-on, trials, and more. Let's look at the results. MOR revenue optimization is built into Paddle and accounts for up to 16% higher conversion rates, reduced payment failures, localized pricing, and churn prevention, recovering 40% of cancellations. Their developer-friendly tools are API first with comprehensive documentation, removing the burden from your engineers. With Paddle as your merchant of record, you'll generate more revenue, find and keep more customers, grow faster, and stay compliant everywhere. So what are you waiting for? Get more revenue with less hassle at paddle.com. Guys, I've got something cool to tell you about. As an engineering leader, a manager, and an engineer myself, I'm geeking out over a new product I'm just discovering that helps me with each of these points of view. The great team at SEMA, builders of the SEMA Intelligence Platform, have been working on what they call the Product Roadmap Radar. It's this integrated solution that uses generative AI to observe your code and Jira in order to summarize, synthesize, and make it easier to deliver your roadmap. It not only helps keep your roadmap on track, but it helps reduce the time engineers spend in meetings. Cue all the engineers clapping. The Product Roadmap Radar is extremely easy to set up. This only takes about 5 minutes. Just enable your integrations and let AI do all the mapping for you. My favorite part? I'm glad you asked. The radar doesn't just tell you about your roadmap. It suggests changes you need to make based on the code that's been written and the stories that have been addressed. No commenting, no special setup, all generative AI. It gives you an outside view of your roadmap based on the code and projects a target completion date based on outstanding work and activity. Again, no comments, no special setup. It even detects shadow work when development is being done but Jira isn't being updated. I'm pretty jazzed about it, and I think you will be too. Take a second to watch a short but awesome demo video. Go to codestory.co/PRR to watch it today. You'll like what you see. This episode is sponsored by Mailtrap, an email platform developers love. Try for free at mailtrap.io. That's mailtrap.io. This episode is sponsored by Postman. APIs are the foundation of reliable AI, and reliable APIs start with Postman. Trusted by 98% of the Fortune 500, Postman is the platform that helps over 40 million developers build and scale the APIs behind their most critical business workflows. With Postman, teams get centralized access to the latest LLMs and APIs, MCP support, and no-code workflows, all in one platform. Quickly integrate critical tools and build multi-step agents without writing a single line of code. Start building smarter, more reliable agents today. Visit postman.com/podcast/codestory to learn more. That's postman.com/podcast/codestory. This message is sponsored by .tech Domains. Picture this. You dig deep and think of an amazing name for your tech startup, spending months to perfect it. And then you settle for a cluttered .com domain with fillers and added words. Yeah, it's really disappointing. That is, unless you get a clean, sharp, and memorable .tech domain. .tech signals loud and clear that tech is at your startup's core. A .tech domain shows your focus and intent, building credibility with VCs and customers, and anyone who sees it knows instantly this is a tech startup. If you are building a tech startup, you want a .tech domain, and that's because it just makes sense. And if I were you, I'd skip the workaround domains and go straight for the loudest signal. Head over to get.tech/codestory or a domain registrar like GoDaddy or Namecheap and grab the perfect .tech domain today. That's get.tech/codestory. So you get that first version built. You were getting some, the traction. Now you're, up to millions of dollars on the platform. How are you building, quote unquote, your roadmap, right? How do you go about deciding what's the next most important thing to do, to build, or to address with Base?
Two things kind of guide the way we think about road mapping. One is having a really strong mission and vision. We've always said that our vision is to bring the whole world on chain. So we say 1 million builders, 1 billion people, $1 trillion of assets. And then the way we achieve that vision is our mission, which is to create this global economy that increases innovation, creativity, and freedom. And so every day when I wake up and I think about what am I going to do today, that's where I start. Out of that mission, we've been able to really distill out a clear strategy that helps guide our day-to-day decision-making. And the core parts of that are making it the best and easiest place to build so that anyone can go from zero to an app in minutes. Building this kind of way for anyone to access all of those apps so that everyone, whether they're a consumer or business, has a reason to get on chain. Growing our economy and markets so that when people build these products, they're plugged into liquidity and all the financial tools that they need. And then finally, making sure that we're running on a decentralized, scalable platform, because we can't build a global economy unless it's decentralized, because otherwise some single corporation or country is going to take control of it. And so those 4 strategic pillars, that's what guides our day-to-day decision-making. That's what we look at when we're saying, okay, what's the next thing that we pick up? How does it tie into one of these strategic pillars? And then we combine that with what I think is maybe one of the things that has made Base successful from the beginning, which is just a relentless focus on understanding and talking to builders. I talk to probably tens or maybe even 100 plus builders. Now, a lot of it's DMs where I'm in Twitter, I'm in Telegram, I'm in Farcaster. What's working for you? What's not working for you? What are your biggest problems? And then all of that's getting fed back into, okay, here's what we're hearing, here's what I'm hearing, here's what our head of DevRel is hearing, here's what our head of kind of developer product is hearing. Let's synthesize that. Let's combine that with this top-down kind of mission, vision, strategic-oriented kind of road mapping to distill out what's highest leverage, what's going to make the actual most impact. And so that combination of top-down, bottoms-up thinking, I think, has let us both be very long-term in the work that we're doing. So we've made sure that we haven't gotten kind of caught in this local maxima where we just circle something that's not going to, solve the biggest problems over the long term, but also be super responsive to what builders actually need. So when things shift, we can jump right on it and make sure that we're kind of at the cutting edge of what they're actually using to build their products. And I think that second component, the being at the cutting edge, talking to customers, it's super, super important in crypto because it is such a fast moving space, probably related to the fact that it's all open source, where because it's all open source, once something starts happening, everyone else can kind of glom onto it. And so making sure that we are seeing what's happening really quickly and then evolving our thinking and strategy around that, I think has been really, really integral to the success that we've had thus far.
I'm curious about team, right? How did you go about building your team? There's early days team, and then there's team now, and maybe even team in the future. But what do you look for in those people to indicate that they're the winning horses to join you?
I had a benefit, which was that I'd been at Coinbase for a long time. When I was thinking about, who's the early team, a lot of it was who are the people I know I love working with? And there is this small group of people who I've now been working with for, 8-9 years. Those were the people who were there at the beginning of Base. The person who I call and think about as the CTO of Base, this guy, Michael, he joined a month before me at Coinbase. He's always been my kind of technical counterpart. I was more the kind of managerial counterpart, but both of us were engineers and we both loved getting into the weeds on technical decision making. And so he really built the first version of Base. A few other people around him, also who I'd worked with for a long time. And then, when we were starting to scale, it started out with me and Michael and a few other engineers. I then had the opportunity to bring in an engineering leader, Andrew, who today is kind of the head of engineering for all of our chain and builder products, who, again, is someone I'd hired back in 2018 to work on the consumer products, I'd watched grow up, I'd mentored, I'd helped him kind of build out his managerial capability. And he was looking for something new to do. And so he came and joined, I think when we were probably like 5 or 6 people, and then scaled us up to kind of where we are today. I think he's probably leading like 50 or 60 engineers. And that's continued, where so much of the core of what makes Base successful is these people who've just been working on it or working on the space and building trusted relationships for a long time. The second big one is I think we've been very successful in attracting other founders to come and be a part of building Base. And this isn't just Base, this is actually Coinbase. How did I join Coinbase? I got acquired. What brought me to Coinbase and what made me actually get excited about joining through that acquisition process? When I interviewed, every single person I interviewed with had previously been a founder who came into the business. And so that was just this like kind of validating experience where I was like, holy crap, I'm surrounded by founders. And it's the same thing that we've tried to do on the Base team. We've done this by making that a component of our interview process where we're really asking people, what have you invented before? What's your experience being a founder? But then we've also really leaned into both acquisitions and acqui-hires, where I think in the last 9 months, we've done maybe 6 acquisitions. Most of them were just talent acquisition, where we found great teams in a subject matter that was really important to us, and we brought them in. And that both gave us kind of more technical expertise in the subject matter, but it also injected kind of more of this entrepreneurial founder energy. And it's actually really cool because sometimes those two things combine, knowing great people who you've worked with for a long time and opportunities to bring in founders. One of our most recent acquisitions was of a team called Rome that we did in the beginning of January. And that was actually someone who I'd worked with for 5 years at Coinbase, who then left to go start a company, did that for 2 to 3 years, and then we acquired them back into the business. And he's now running all of the engineering for Coinbase Wallet, which is our kind of consumer entry point to Base and the rest of the global economy. And so, yeah, those are probably the 2 big things. It's like making sure that you have these trusted relationships with people, which of course not everyone's gonna be able to do, especially if you're just starting out. Like I remember when I was first starting out and I didn't know anyone. I think if you do have history and context, that's a really powerful lever for making sure that you're attracting and retaining the best folks. And then 2, really leaning into this kind of entrepreneurial talent to make sure that even as you grow, you still kind of retain that hustle of people who wake up every single day thinking about how do we achieve something really ambitious. And yeah, I think that's kind of what makes the Base core team so high impact right now.
This episode is brought to you by Propel Off. People take authentication for granted, but it's more than how customers log into your product. It's how you manage your relationship with your users. The easiest way to make authentication your advantage is to use Propel Auth. Propel Auth is more than just functional. It's powerful. With tools like Managed UIs, Enterprise SSO, robust user management features, and actionable insights, Propel Auth adapts as your product grows. And the best part? When auth is effortless, your team can focus on scaling, not troubleshooting. That means more releases, happier customers, and more growth for your business. Save dev time, win over your customers, and propel your business forward with Propel Auth. Check them out at propelauth.com. That's propelauth.com. This episode is sponsored by Search. In today's digital landscape, search isn't just a feature, it's a cornerstone, and you need a user experience that drives customer satisfaction. You need Search. Search has lightning-fast performance, returning answers in less than 50 milliseconds. Yeah, you heard that right. Faster than the blink of an eye. The open-source AI search engine is plug-and-play, so you can get up and running in minutes with smart presets, allowing you to start searching through your data with zero configuration. Search utilizes advanced full-text search and AI, ensuring your results are ultra-relevant with semantic depth. It's multimodal, supporting images, videos, and audio, along with being federated, i.e. searching across multiple data sources. And it's developer-friendly. Whether you're building a content-rich website or enterprise application, Search delivers the experience your users expect and deserve. For a limited time, CodeStory users can get 2 months free. Use the promo code CODESTORY, all one word, at checkout. Just go to mailysearch.com and get started today. That's MEILI search.com. So let's move into scalability. And, given this is This is based on chain, right? You're building things for on chain. I think scalability is something that's factored in to how you build it, but it always has areas that, maybe can rear its ugly head. So I'm curious about how you have approached that, or if there's been interesting areas where you've had to fight it as you've grown.
This is one of the most important technical challenges for us on a day-to-day basis. For the first 5 years at Coinbase, I was the person who was responsible for all of the scalability and uptime of Coinbase.com. And that was from 2017 to about 2021, 2022. If you followed along crypto, that was a pretty intense period for Coinbase scalability. A ton of growth, a ton of very rapid kind of injection of demand where the price of Bitcoin went really high and millions of people rushed to try and get access to it. Candidly, if you reflect back to those years, I think there's a lot of stuff that we actually did pretty poorly. It was a whole meme of like, every time the price of Bitcoin goes up, Coinbase goes down. And that was me and my team. Like when Coinbase was going down and we were having scalability issues, it was like my day that was getting completely blown up and trying to figure out what do we actually do. Obviously, lots of reflections on what we could have done better, but I think also a ton of learning for me and for Michael and other leaders who are now working on Base, where we got to see firsthand what does it look like to try and scale, what does it look like to fail, what are the key gotchas that we want to avoid if we do this again. And we've really injected a lot of that thinking, those learnings into our work on Base. Because when we think about scaling Base, you can't build a global economy unless the underlying infrastructure that those people are going to use works at a massive scale. And so that's been our North Star from a technical perspective from the beginning. It's how do we stay ahead of the curve from an adoption perspective by investing early, often, and in a really long-term and strategic way in scalability. We've done that in a bunch of different ways. One is that we've really tried to make it so that our kind of scaling goals are long-term and specific. And so we measure this thing called throughput, basically, which in the traditional world, you might hear about like requests per second, but we use this term called gas per second. And you can kind of think about gas as the measure of computational complexity for something to run on the computer that is Base. So if you want to add two numbers together, that's going to be really simple from a complexity perspective. But maybe if you want to, do a complex swap of different assets, that's going to be more complex. Every single app or transaction that runs on Base is measured in gas. So you can literally look and be like, okay, I did this transaction. Here's how many 100,000 gas it used. And so when we're kind of thinking about scaling Base, the thing we're looking at is how much gas per second can we process? The more gas per second we can process, the more of those transactions and applications we can support. And so when we started working on Base about 2 years ago, we were at something like 2.5 million gas per second. We could compute kind of enough operations that would fill 2.5 million gas. Today, we are at about 35 million gas per second. So that's almost like 18x from where we were just 18 months ago. We literally put curve on the map where we were like, we want to grow X per gas per second every month. And then we've just worked relentlessly to achieve those goals by optimizing all of the software stack that goes into running Base. And where we're going next is we're going to 10x again, and then we're going to 10x again, and then we're going to 10x again. One of the really interesting things about this is that it is very similar in certain ways to the scaling experience I had at Coinbase, but it's also pretty different in one really important way, which was that, when you're trying to scale a kind of off-chain system like Coinbase, there are all of these kind of like dependencies and different systems, microservices that have to kind of work together where one goes down and it's going to cause cascading failures and they're all interlinked. And that introduces all of this kind of hidden complexity that I think is very hard to reason about at times. But the really cool thing about Base and scaling Base is you can kind of think about it like scaling a single computer. Like literally it is a virtual machine and there's a bunch of kind of systems that plug into that virtual machine. But if we can scale that virtual machine, then everything else that's built on that virtual machine will get those scalability benefits. And so that gives us this like laser focus in terms of where we invest our resources and the kind of environment that we can kind of contain the challenge in as we're scaling. And so we literally today have like benchmarking software where we can run the base virtual machine across a bunch of different, scalability guardrails and metrics and, configurations and be like, what's working, what's not working. And it's almost like it's laboratory where we get to really zero in on making this one global computer work really, really well, which then unlocks all the scalability for everyone else. It's been awesome. It's still day one. We have so much more work to do. But again, we can't deliver on this mission of building a global economy unless it's a scalable platform.
Okay, so as you step out on the balcony, you look at all that you've built thus far with Base. What are you most proud of?
So much to be proud of, I think, on the technology side and the growth and progress. The thing I'm probably the most proud about, though, is the people. One of the things that's really different about Base versus, I think, other traditional software products is the core product that we're actually building. Yes, there's the technology, but the core product is an economy where people are doing things in that economy. And in order to have an economy, you need people. And for us, the primary type of person we need builders. People who are going to come into the economy and build apps or build their creativity or build their community or build their social presence or build a small business. We've done a huge amount of work and I think been very successful in attracting people all around the world, like literally every single country in the world, to come and build on Base. And every day I get to interact with those people. This morning, as I was getting out of bed, I was messaging with a builder in Iran, a builder in Nigeria, a builder in Argentina, a builder in the Philippines, a builder in the United States, a builder in Canada, a builder in Austria, and a builder in Japan. Like, before I got out of bed, that was my DMs. I was talking with literally like 10 people in different countries all around the world. And all of them are coming at the problems they're solving with different perspectives, with different cultural groundings. But we've been able to create this ethos, and we talk about it as like being based, which for us means, working hard, means doing the right thing. It means staying optimistic. It means pushing boundaries with creativity. It means putting the team over the individual. Like, that's what being based means. We've been able to attract all of these based builders in every single part of the world who are bringing their unique perspectives, their unique skill sets to build their own products and to help us grow the economy. And getting to wake up and do that every single day and get to be with all these people as we take on super hard challenges and learn and fail and grow, it's like the greatest honor and joy of my entire life. And it's something that I'm super proud of because I do think that there's this kind of thread of being based that all of us have been attracted to and that all of us kind of rally around, which I believe has a pretty powerful opportunity to make the world a better place. Because if we embodied those values, like doing the right thing, as we're building this new internet and as we're proliferating this new software platform and all the apps that are going to be built on top of it, I think that's going to lead to people building better products that work better for everyday people, that put more money and value and ownership back in the hands of the people who I think have mostly gotten a raw deal over the last 20 years.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
I mean, one that's very top of mind for me right now is I think early on in the kind of journey of Base, we had this vision and mission, obviously, of building a global economy. But there were a lot of moments where we kind of made footfalls about, as we were trying to communicate, what did that mean? And how could we actually go to a place other than where I live, the United States, and make an impact? And we did it in kind of bad or wrong ways. And the place where that came from, I think, was obviously we had good intentions, but I think it's very hard to reason about and understand what do folks in a totally different country need to hear, and what are the tools that they need in order to be successful, and what are the cultural kind of markers that are going to help them feel welcome and included, unless you actually are in that country. Me sitting in California being like, oh yeah, I know the answer to like how to serve builders in Pakistan or in Nigeria. I think we got a little bit out ahead of ourselves on trying to do that. And that led to basically mistakes in just like how we were actually able to serve those builders. And what we did about that was kind of starting at the beginning of this year, we really shifted our approach where, we've now in the last 6 months, we've actually hired kind of like 15 different leaders in different countries all around the world, and then kind of empowered them as the decision makers for how do we take these tools and make them really useful and relevant to folks in the countries that they live in. And that's just already started to leading to such better results because they get it. They know they're there. Like that's their country. If we're building a global economy, we're not going to get there by copying and pasting my Americanized view of what that means everywhere in the world. No, we're going to get there by welcoming in leaders from every country in the world and saying, hey, you tell us what you think this platform should look like. And then we'll do everything we can to make that possible. That kind of decentralized way to do this, way to build this, that's been a huge learning for us. And I think it's been a much more successful, obviously still very early in the grand scheme of things, but already leading to better results than the previous kind of like, we can figure it out ourselves.
Let's switch to you, Jesse. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
Well, the first person I really look up to is Brian Armstrong, who's the CEO of Coinbase. I get to work pretty closely with him. He manages me. We do our regular one-on-ones, and I've now been working with him for 8 years. And he's also a builder. Like he's an engineer originally, and in every kind of strategic lens is always building that builder mindset. But he's also just one of the most kind of calm, cool, collected, strategic people I've ever met. Watching how he's navigated the ups and downs of building this business and navigating the markets and being out front on, I think, a bunch of really kind of scary cultural trends. And the way he's done it with just like patience and calmness, it has been a real like inspiration for me about building my ability to kind of bring that same peace and that same long-term calm approach to everything that I do. And so that's been one, I'd say, really, really big one. Another one is the creator of Ethereum, this guy Vitalik Buterin. Again, I'd say he brings a level of calmness and long-term perspective that I really look up to. And I think his clarity of thought, he's someone who can both operate at the incredibly high strategic level and then also get into like the absolute technical weeds of like designing a new VM for Ethereum and be writing research on it. And the range there of like being able to range from setting strategic roadmap on like a 4-year horizon that spans across all of these different domains to being able to solve the like hardest technical problem that the kind of community is facing today. That's really inspiring. And it's something that I try and do my best at because I do think it's really valuable to have leaders who can both be strategic and both be highly technical.
Jesse, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit several times?
If you have a demo, like show it. There's nothing more compelling than just having a live demo, even if it's janky, even if there's something that is broken. Being able to just whip something out and be like, here's what I built is so much more, I think, compelling and is going to draw someone like me in way more than showing a deck or talking about the problem. Those things are important as well, but having the real product in your hands and being like, oh, I can actually see what you're talking about and try it. I'd say like that's the like best place to start. And then I'd say that the second thing I'd share is like figuring out how you can frame whatever problem you're trying to solve in a way that whoever you're talking to can understand easily. I think is really, really important. And the way you build that is by going and talking to a lot of customers. That's the only way. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, no shortcuts. The way you can message what your product is, and I think build a great product, is by trying and failing and trying and failing and trying and failing until you finally feel like you can actually do it. And so don't be afraid to whip it out and like whip out your product and show it to someone on the plane next to you. Don't be afraid to show it to your friends and family. Don't be afraid to show it to a stranger on the street. The more reps you get at doing that, the more likely you are to be able to build a great product and be able to communicate that product in a way that everyone else can understand.
Well, that's fantastic advice. Well, Jesse, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for telling the creation story of Base.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ12 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.